Welcome back to the Bite Me Nutrition Podcast. Today we don't have intro music, and it's probably the first time I think ever, or unless my first ones didn't. I can't remember. But I got quite a lot of feedback saying that it was too loud, and I'm not prepared to do the audio mixing that I'll need to do to make it balanced. So it's gone, but that's okay. RIP intro music. It does mean though that we're going to get into the good stuff a bit quicker, so that's great. And today's good stuff is, look, I call the podcast Ozempic because I think that's the word, certainly in the media and on social media, that people are seeing the most, and it's probably the default when we're talking about weight loss medications as a whole. But today is going to be more talking about, yes, Ozempic, and Wegovy, but also kind of another class of medications as well, around Mounjaro and Zepbound. So basically, to set the scene, Ozempic / Wegovy are brand names for a drug called semaglutide, right? In just the same way that Panadol is a brand name of a drug called paracetamol, right? Same thing. So semaglutide is really the thing, and Ozempic and Wegovy are the names that you might instead hear them called. Now, the other class of medications we're going to be talking about is Zepatides. Apologies in advance for the butchering of those names that I'm probably going to do, but that is your Mounjaro and your Zepbound. Okay, so slightly different mechanisms of action between your semaglutide and your Zepatide. We'll go through what those look like. Just at the current time of recording, so August 2024, Ozempic and Mounjaro are approved for the management of type 2 diabetes symptoms in Australia only. They're not actually approved for weight loss or the management of obesity. So technically, you can get them prescribed for that in a way that's called off-label. So I've definitely had lots of clients that GPs are doing that to help them with body fat loss. You have to tick a few boxes to be approved for that, have a few conditions that you're managing to become eligible. But if that is the case, yes, technically these have been approved only for type 2 diabetes symptom management. Again, at the time of recording, so August 2024, literally this month, Wegovy, which is a semaglutide, has been approved in Australia specifically for weight loss. So technically, I expect that moving forwards, I'm going to get more clients who, if they have become eligible for these medications and want to use them, if it's just for the management of obesity, we'll see them being prescribed Wegovy, and Ozempic / Mounjaro will be more about the management of symptoms in type 2 diabetes. But that leads me to a very, very, very important point. I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is not me telling you whether you should or shouldn't take these medications. I don't know you. I don't know if you're eligible. Even if I did know you, I'm not going to say, yes, you should. I might say, hey, have you had this discussion with your GP? Because that is exactly who you should be discussing this with if you have questions about it, or if you feel like you might be eligible. You should not be listening to a podcast or reading blogs or watching YouTube videos on this stuff unless you have first talked to your GP. Okay. So if they have flagged that, yes, you are eligible, and they've had that conversation with you, this podcast is hopefully just to help you understand a little bit more about what's going on, and help you make a bit more of an informed decision as to whether that's something you want to do. But again, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but you should talk to your doctor. That's it. Cool. So basically the way that both semaglutide and tirzepatide work, so remember that's all of the ones we've just chatted about, they share a mechanism of action, and then your tirzepatide has an extra kind of layer on top of it. So semaglutide, Ozempic, and Wegovy, and all of them, they work because they are what's called GLP agonists, i.e. they can have the same effect that our GLP-1, which is a hormone that we naturally produce called glucagon-like peptide 1, they can have the same effect that hormone has, right? They can mimic its action, and so we can cause more of that action to occur. And that's really, really good when it comes to the management of type 2 diabetes, because those actions are things like increasing your insulin secretion, so making your body release more insulin, which is helpful for managing blood sugar. It decreases the amount of glucagon released. So glucagon is just kind of the opposite hormone of insulin, so reducing it is helpful as well. And it can also help reduce something called hepatic gluconeogenesis, which basically means it can stop your liver from making new glucose, right? Hepatic means liver, glucose, new, genesis, make, right? Liver, make new glucose. it's nice to know that some of my anatomy stuff from uni is still rattling around in here. But all three of those things can be really, really beneficial in improving your management of blood sugars, right? It can reduce your area under the curve, and so improve something called HbA1c. Just really good improvements in blood sugar control, right? Which for type 2 diabetes is phenomenal, because those complications are, in terms of like blindness, kidneys, all of these things can be impacted down the line if we have poor blood sugar control. So that's really, really good. Now, we also know that GLP-1 can decrease gastric emptying, i.e., it can slow the amount of time that it takes for food to get through your gut, which makes you feel fuller, right? Makes sense. If food is hanging out there a little bit longer, you're probably less likely to go and eat. And so we know that GLP-1 can definitely reduce your appetite. And I'm sure you can appreciate that if your appetite is reduced, you're probably going to eat a bit less. And if you're going to eat a bit less, you're probably going to lose weight. So that's one of the other reasons as to why these medications have been prescribed for the management of obesity off-label, right? Now, when it comes to Mounjaro and Zepbound, these are the Zepatides. They also are GLP-1 agonists. So all that stuff I just talked about, the insulin, the glucagon, the hepatic gluconeogenesis. There's way too many big words in this podcast, sorry. But all of those things, it still does that, but it also is a GIP agonist. Sorry, forgot. And so it can also mimic the action of GIP. Now, I forgot to look up what GIP was before I recorded this podcast. So it's probably like gastro something peptide. Anyway, it's kind of it's a similar, what's called an incretin hormone, but basically it can have similar impacts to GLP-1, but one of the other things it can do is it can increase the insulin sensitivity of your fat cells, which makes them easier to break down. Okay, so that's why what we see in the trials, Tirzepatides typically have greater impacts on fat loss than semaglutides, because Tirzepatides have that extra mechanism. They've got that GIP agonist impact as well. Okay, so that's what we're seeing now. Now, like I said, though, right now in Australia, the only one that has been approved specifically for the management of obesity is Wegovy, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Mounjaro or Zepbound potentially get approved for the management of obesity in Australia at some point. But like, just spitballing here, don't please. I'm just a dietitian. So a big question I get, because there's a weird ethical conversation around this. There shouldn't be, but there is. And I'm not going to go too deeply into it. But the answer I always give is when someone says, should I take Ozempic for weight loss? Because I don't think what they're asking is, does it work, right? We're pretty confident that it works. Like I said, there's this weird kind of ethical, am I cheating? I don't know, all these weird things. And so the analogy or the similarity I always draw is between these medications and using medications for, say, depression. So taking antidepressants. Hopefully, no one feels guilty about taking antidepressants to manage their depression. Okay. If you do, please go talk to someone about that, because you shouldn't. And it's very similar to weight loss medication, right? So just like with antidepressants, no one is telling everybody who's a little bit sad to go on antidepressants, right? And even some people who are struggling with clinical depression may not need antidepressants. But for lots of people who are struggling with depression, antidepressants are phenomenally helpful. They might need to be on antidepressants for a short time. They may need to be on antidepressants for a very, very long time. The dosage of those antidepressants may change over time. Nobody who is prescribing antidepressants is just saying, hey, just take some antidepressants, good luck. They're also saying, hey, take these. Also, hopefully these help you focus on the lifestyle interventions as well. The psychological strategies, taking care of yourself, hopefully improving your nutrition, all of those amazing things that we also know also help with the management of depression. But oftentimes, you need the antidepressants to give you the support to be able to do those other activities, which are also really helpful, right? So hopefully you can see all of the reasons why that is the same as these weight loss medications. No one is prescribing these medications, sorry, that's not true. People shouldn't be prescribing these medications for someone who just wants to lose a couple of pounds, right? They are for the management of more serious cases, right? Secondly, no one is suggesting that you just take these medications and don't make any lifestyle changes. Like I've seen with all of my clients who were eligible and have opted to start the medication, it has supported them in making the changes that they were already trying to make, right? It has improved their ability to continue to make those positive changes. That's really what it's about. It's not about, is it right or wrong or any of, again, the weird ethical things. It's just down to, is it right for you? Are you eligible? And will it facilitate you doing those things the other things that you could do to support your health and body composition, right? So that's hopefully that has summed up how I feel about them. I just wanted to finish by touching on kind of two of the main symptoms I think that come up a lot of the time. Now, there are quite a few reports of GI distress. That's, that's seen in the studies. That's very real. Things like nausea, reflux, vomiting, and definitely less frequent, but those sorts of feelings are definitely a potential side effect. Now, like with most medications, everyone's individual response is different. We've definitely also seen with clients that there's certain dietary strategies you can use to reduce the risk of getting those symptoms. Typically, look, broadly, it's things like still eating a good quality diet, overall. Doesn't mean never eating a donut, but it does mean that, we're not just talking about, oh yeah, just eat whatever you want and take these medications. We still want to strive for an overall healthy dietary pattern. We find that helps with the side effects, and also definitely listening very closely to your hunger and fullness cues, even if they seem a bit different, because they're going to be different on this medication. Listening to those is also really, really helpful. If you do want more help and you're on these medications, like shameless plug. Actually, it's not shameless. Come and talk to us. We can help you. And if you don't want to talk to us, that's totally fine. Go talk to other dietitians that I'm happy to connect you up with. And we can help build a good diet that will help. The last side effect I've heard people fear-mongering about is the loss of lean mass, so i.e. bone and muscle, particularly muscle. And obviously that's not great. We definitely want that to maintain. But the reality is this is something that we know occurs in weight loss all the time. This is not unique to the weight loss that's occurring on these medications. Anyone who loses a significant amount of weight is at a higher risk of losing lean body mass. Now, technically, it's often still worth it in the long run in terms of improvements in health, but it also means that we still absolutely strongly suggest that you do all of the other things that you can do to protect your lean mass. So whether you are dieting, you're in a calorie deficit without these medications, or you're in a calorie deficit with these medications, we would still strongly recommend getting adequate amounts of protein, trying to space that throughout the day, and then most importantly, lifting weights, doing some form of resistance training. If it's not weights, it's bands. If it's not bands, it's like aqua aerobics, some kind of resistance. And just again, like any kind of fat loss journey that you're on, whether it's with medication or without medication, these things, protein and resistance training, are invaluable for protecting your lean body mass. So I haven't seen anything to suggest that these medications amplify or cause more than expected loss of lean body mass. It is pretty much, probably the biggest thing is like, yes, it might cause slightly larger lean body mass than if you're dieting without the medications, but that's largely just because the medication typically allows you to eat and in more of a deficit. So it kind of just tracks with the size of the deficit. And again, eat protein, lift weights. I mean, sort of everyone should do that. I'm sure there's a bumper sticker or a shirt out there that says that as well. But yeah. Anyway, I hope that's helped. I think that's everything. If it's not, let me know. Comment below. Send me a most. I was going to say send me a post and a message. So send me a most. But most importantly, if you found this really helpful, I'd love a review or a like or a share, so I can continue to validate my self-worth. All right. Thanks.